It's official. We've said it too much about the Reds this season. Boy, you really can't lose a game that way.
You are Locked On Reds, your daily Cincinnati Reds podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On Reds. My name is Jeff Carr, and I am a lifelong Cincinnati Reds fan. I want to thank you for making Locked On Reds part of your day and joining me on today's episode. If you are, and this is your first time, I would like you to know that you can drop down into the YouTube comment section and leave us a thought, leave us a question, leave us a comment. I do want to ask you too, if you're watching here on YouTube, or if you're listening, hit us up on Twitter. You can hit me up at Jeff Carr with 3 Fs, or you can hit Steve up at S. Offenbaker with 2 Fs. I have a question for you today that I'm going to give you my answer a little bit later on in today's show. Which former Reds player from a non-Reds playoff team, which I know there's quite a few of, at least here in the last 30 years. But which player on a non-Reds playoff team would you love to transport from that year and put on this year's team and make this year's team better? I'm going to give you my answer on that later on in today's episode of Locked On Reds, which is, as always, brought to you by Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every single day, and we talk about the Reds every single day. Win, lose, or lose badly like they did on Sunday. You can't. And they've done this so often. They've done this so often where they lose a game where they just, how did you lose? How did you lose a game that way? The Reds find ways to do that here in 2024. It's very frustrating. We'll talk about that here in just a few minutes. I want to kind of start off first with how the bad loss really translates into what they should do in the trade deadline. There's a lot of folks that are saying, well, you lost this Tampa Bay series. Apparently you're sellers. There's not, I don't think that there's a direct correlation to that, but I have a thought about that here on today's Locked On Reds podcast that is brought to you by SupplyHouse.com. SupplyHouse.com is the reliable way to get parts fast. Shop your next plumbing, HVAC, or electrical job and get fast shipping from coast to coast at SupplyHouse.com. And where I want to start today, trade deadline is very soon. I'm actually releasing this on Sunday. We typically release on Monday morning, but I'm going to go ahead and do this on here on Sunday because today, man, oh man, that game was just so frustrating. The Reds really needed to win this series, and not for the sake of the trade deadline. I've seen some headlines and some articles written by some folks around the team that they're just like, boy, this loss to Tampa Bay really hurts their ambitions of being buyers at the deadline. They were never going to be traditional buyers. So this series should not have affected that. This trade deadline, and I know people are going to misconstrue this because let me kind of lay this out for you. This trade deadline is the beginning of this offseason's plan. If the Reds make a run and if the Reds make it to the playoffs, I will be ecstatic. I will also be surprised. I have gone from a person that has expected playoffs for this team this season to seeing all of the losses and all of the just head-scratching plays that they've made to either lose games or not come back in games that it looked like they were making a comeback in, or not take the lead when they had a chance, things like this. They have left too many opportunities on the table. So this trade deadline is the beginning of this offseason. And this offseason is not an offseason of selling. It's not an offseason of tearing down more. This is an offseason of building. 2025 must be a playoff team. If it is not, hard questions should be asked of the front office, hard questions should be asked of the managerial staff, and quite frankly, hard questions should be asked of the managerial staff after this season. But basically, we as fans should be marking 2025 as a must make the playoff year. Because the plan has looked good. The plan of building this team has seemed good on paper, in theory, in hopes, in dreams, in narrative building. It has looked good. On the field, we haven't seen it yet. And that's where it matters. As much as we want to be excited about the future of this team, as much as I am excited about the potential of the players on this team, we have to see it. Potential does not win championships. So how do you build that team? It started with this trade deadline, and quite frankly, I get it. They're beholden to the timeline of the sellers, who is trading, who is not, when are they trading, when aren't they, like all that good stuff. So it's not as if I'm begrudging them for taking too long, but they have certainly waited too long for this season, for this deadline to be impactful on this season. So this deadline must now positively impact next year. What does that look like? That can look like many different things, because we're seeing teams like the Angels that traded Carlos Estevez to the Phillies for the Phillies' number 2 and number 3 pitching prospects. According to Baseball America, and I know that there were some folks that were reporting that the 2 prospects that the Angels got in that trade were in the 20s. That's wrong. Baseball America had both of those prospects in the top 10. The Angels got 2 top 10 Phillies prospects for their closer. The Rays, the team that just beat the Reds, traded their setup man, not their closer, their setup man, for 3 prospects to the San Diego Padres. 3 decent prospects. The Reds have an opportunity here. And while I hate the idea of selling current Major League ball players, it looks as if this would be the right year to trade away a relief pitcher. Now, it's kind of frustrating to watch a lot of these relief pitchers come into the Reds bullpen and walk guys. We'll talk more about that here in a few minutes. But if you can turn Fernando Cruz into some good prospects that will feed the system down the road, then I'll take that. Because you have to make moves. You have to improve the team either for next year or the years in the future. You cannot stand pat. This team standing pat will be a failure. Standing pat at this deadline just means you are pushing everything to the offseason. And quite frankly, you might get some players right now that you wouldn't in the offseason. Mostly probably on the future side of things. But if you can go get an outfielder like a Luis Robert or somebody like that, although it's probably going to cost a lot. But my point is this. Nick Krall cannot look at this Rays series where the Reds lose 2 out of 3 in crushing fashion and say, well, because of that, we're not doing anything. Because they're not going to be sellers in the traditional sense where they sell off everybody that's not tied down, but they will be able to trade a few guys. What can you get for Lucas Sims? Is there just a monumental, astronomical, nuclear trade that you can make that involves Alexis Diaz? He's got to look at how he improves this team for next year and the year beyond, not how this current roster for 2024 for the final, what are we down to now, 58, 57 games? He cannot be looking at those numbers. He needs to be looking at 2025. Because whatever happens for this year's team will be a surprise if it is playoff related. Because they have put that way. The Reds and their performance has put that way. What do I mean by that? Well, I'll break that down because the Reds lost the series in Tampa Bay in a most ridiculous fashion. And quite frankly, I don't know who should be the most frustrated about it, but we're going to talk about who should be the most frustrated about it coming up next. If you're looking for that kind of outfit that your wife's not going to be like, you know what, maybe you ought to change it, you got to check out Stitch Fix today. That's how I got this shirt. If you're watching on YouTube, I'm wearing this very nice, comfy gray shirt with like black sleeves on it. Stitch Fix has so many different kind of styles for you. And it's so easy because you get this stylist that helps you out. And they help you upgrade your style, because all you got to do is you send them your preferences when it comes to like budget, your size preferences and what you can wear, and maybe something as far as like your style goes. Like if you're like me and your style is your team, you're probably just like, hey, can you give me some grown-up clothes, things like that. They will help you out. You got to check out Stitch Fix today, because my stylist sent me over this box, and in the box you get all these different pieces. You get shoes, you get shorts, you get pants, you get shirts, and you try on what you like, you keep, and then you send back what you don't like, and you only pay for what you keep. It's so easy. Check out stitchfix.com/MLB, and you'll even get $20 off your first fix. Again, that's stitchfix.com/MLB for $20 off. stitchfix.com/MLB. You must redeem within 7 days of sign up. You've got to check out Locked On Sports Today. It's a 24/7 streaming channel programmed for you with the biggest stories in all of sports. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, news, and opinions from our Locked On hosts like myself and Steve, and our national hosts that cover every league, all on the YouTube channel, Locked On Sports Today 24/7 YouTube channel, or on the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. And speaking of every day, shout out to our everydayers out there. Thank you for making us part of your day. Thank you for making Locked On Reds part of your day. If you're not an everydayer, you can become one by subscribing here on YouTube or on your favorite podcasting app. If you're watching here on YouTube and maybe you're, going out on a run or taking a drive or something like that, we are on iTunes, we're on Spotify, so many different podcasting apps out there that you can take us with you and just listen whenever you're not able to watch. Make sure you check those out today. All right, so talked about the Tampa Bay series and why it shouldn't affect the deadline. The reason why we were talking about that is because there were some folks that were surmising because of lost games. They're like, is the trade deadline now going to be a wash for the Reds? Are they going to make a move? Are they going to sell? Are they going to buy? What are they going to do? The reason they're talking about that is because the Reds missed an opportunity. For these 3 games, the Reds won the first, lost the second 2. The second game, whatever. Like, Andrew Abbott had a horrible performance, only lasted 4 innings, got clobbered, gave up a couple of homers to guys that do not hit home runs. There was one homer from somebody that doesn't hit home runs, and then, Yandy Diaz. Yandy Diaz does hit home runs, so I over-exaggerate a little bit there. But the Reds also did not hit. They faced Zach Little, who, until that game, had done very little. And he absolutely destroyed the Reds lineup. They couldn't do a thing against him. And, oh, by the way, he's right-handed. He's not left-handed. So don't really know what's going on there. Then Sunday comes around, and you get this amazing performance from Hunter Greene, who yet again is just etching his name into possible awards. He should get Cy Young votes. He should be getting, attention for these awards, because he is pitching phenomenally. He cannot help it when his lineup doesn't give him any help whatsoever. And oh, by the way, Elly Cruz tried. Elly Cruz was going crazy. He had a 4-steal game, had multiple hits. He himself has been fantastic for a while now. But he gets no help. 1 run. The Reds had 7 hits. Got 1 in the 9th inning from Jake Fraley, and 1 run. Meanwhile, in the 8th inning, the inning after Hunter Greene was lifted, the Reds bring in Fernando Cruz. 3 walks, 1 hit later, and the weirdest way to give up a run that I've ever seen. Okay, not weirdest ever. There was that balk off, but still, this goes up there. The Reds end up losing 2-1. 2 runs are scored in the 8th inning, and the Rays only got 1 hit. This was the kind of loss that expanded into a series loss, but this was the kind of loss that crushes a season. The Rays are actively selling. The Rays have traded multiple players at the deadline already. They could trade a couple of more between now and Tuesday. The Rays are not trying to go for the postseason. Reportedly, the Reds are. They were not the better team in this one. In fact, if we want to play this game, and there's a lot of different fans of franchises that do this all the time, where either their team wins or their team beats themselves. They don't lose to other teams. That's not the way that the Reds go most of the time. But this year, it felt like that. There's been more losses that you can pin on the Reds than you can tip your cap to the opponent. And this was exactly one of those losses. Because the Rays had a bullpen game. This was not, they traded Zach Eflin, so he's not there. This was not a top flight, amazing starting pitcher that the Rays farm system just churns out year in and year out. This was, and I like to credit my friend Austin Elmore over at ESPN 1530 and 700 WLW for this. This was a Johnny Wholestaff day. The whole staff, the whole pitching staff for the Rays was used in this game, felt like. And David Bell catered his lineup accordingly. He said, okay, the Rays have this left-hander in their bullpen that they throw for multiple innings during bullpen days, so we will load up the lineup with right-handers. The Rays didn't pitch that guy. This was a very strange game of poker that David Bell played with the lineups and pitching matchups and all this other stuff with the Rays, and the Rays just easily beat him. Because there was never a situation where the Reds had a righty on lefty. I mean, it was a very frustrating watch. You had so many right-handed hitters going up against right-handed pitchers, and they were just flailing. Austin Slater does not look like he should ever see another at-bat against a right-handed pitcher. Stuart Fairchild, quite frankly, is right there along with him. I mean, there was one inning from Garrett Clevenger from the Rays, who is a left-hander. But other than that, this game was not well managed. And then the whole debacle of the eighth inning of Fernando Cruz giving up 2 walks and a single to load the bases ties the game by getting a strikeout, but then Austin Wynns loses the ball, can't get to the ball before everybody moves up a base. The third out of the inning, that was the inning. That was the game. And Austin Wynns can't hold on to strike 3 and can't find the ball after he drops strike 3. So then, after that happens, after the Reds lose the lead, tie game, all right, then David goes and gets Fernando Cruz. And then David brings in Lucas Sims, who you, me, and every single person watching at home that has loved the Reds and watched the Reds all season long, as much as we love Lucas Sims and he is a friend of the show, he has been prone to walking people this year. And when the bases are loaded, you know what you can't do? You can't give up a walk. He proceeds to walk the very first guy he faces on 5 pitches. And that's how the game ended. I mean, the Reds, they came up in the 9th inning. Jake Fraley hit a single. Looked like they might try for a little 2-out rally there, but they were just absolutely shut down lineup-wise by the Rays pitching staff that did not throw their A game at the Reds. And then the bullpen blows it in just the most frustrating way possible. These are the losses, and I've said this too much, and it's beaten me down. It's turned my optimism into realism. Congratulations, everybody who thought that I was far too optimistic about this team. You were right! They've beat me down with the whole, I can't believe they just lost the lead that way. It's just been so frustrating to watch that stuff, man. And it was just, again, on Sunday, it felt like the 50th time they've done that this year. And I know my voice is getting whiny, so I'm not going to continue along that path. But suffice it to say, that was the most frustrating. I think that's the most frustrating loss the Reds have had all year. And there's been a lot of them. And quite frankly, we could probably do a power rankings of that at the end of the season and see where we rank them. But right now, I'm rating this Rays loss the most frustrating loss that I've seen from this Reds team all year long. Because as much as I want to cling to any hope that the Reds can come back in this playoff race, you know who doesn't lose games like that? Playoff teams. But we got to turn this around, right? We got to have some fun. Got to have some fun to finish this game, to finish this podcast off here today. Thank you so much for joining us on this Lockdown Reds podcast, because coming up next, I hope you've given me a few thoughts about former Reds players that you would love to see on this team, because I'm going to give you the guy that I think would make this team a playoff team. Get supplies from the site that's made for the skilled trades, supplyhouse.com. SupplyHouse.com is the reliable way to order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Shop a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from over 400 top brands and get your order delivered right to your door with fast shipping from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Get expert support and industry-leading service from the friendliest folks in the business and talk to a real person every time. Pros in the skilled trades know that they can get a competitive edge by joining SupplyHouse.com's free Trade Master program. Every Trade Master gets access to a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Join the thousands of trade pros already benefiting from their free membership at SupplyHouse.com/TM and order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies from anywhere with just a few clicks at SupplyHouse.com. You can catch every pitch of the Reds' hometown broadcast with SiriusXM. Just download the SXM app and search the word Reds. Would be a great thing to do whenever the Reds are on Roku. If you don't have Roku. I had to download Roku and go through all that rigmarole to watch that game. Glad that I did that. Also, you can check out lots of great written content about your Cincinnati Reds over at CincinnatiRedsTalk.com. I'm writing over there. James Rapine's writing over there. Greg Kuffner, who is Reds Daily on Twitter, is also writing over there. Got a lot of great content for you about your favorite baseball team. All right, let's finish off with a little bit of fun because I was thinking about this the other day, and I think that you would enjoy this as well. And like I said, if you haven't got a chance to, write down in the comments section or hit me up on X at Jeff Carr with 3 Fs. Who is the player of past Reds non-playoff teams who would make this team a playoff team? The 2024 Reds, going back through the history of the Reds, and I think that there's an argument to be made about players before like 1990, but you would have to convince me that they could hit a cut fastball that goes 98 miles an hour. But I really wanted to do this because I'm thinking, all right, there are playoff teams in the history of the Reds that obviously you could pick a lot of players from and put on this 2024 team and make it a playoff team. But who among the non-playoff teams, which players, is labored the right word? which players absolutely shined while the rest of the team didn't, and so they didn't get to play in the postseason? Because quite frankly, you could pick any number of years that Joseph Daniel Votto played, put him on this team, and you'd feel really good about them. But I don't think that makes them a playoff team. I don't think prime Joey Votto, and maybe he does, but I have a perfect example here because my pick, if you were to go back through and look at the Reds teams that didn't make the playoffs, take one player off that team and put it on this team, and then this team becomes a playoff team, it's 1999 Mike Cameron. And yes, and I'm saying you could be that specific. You can pick a year, pick a player of a non-playoff Reds team and put it on this team. Because if you take Mike Cameron out of 1999 and you put him on this team, I think this team is a playoff team, no doubt. Because of what he did. You're going to immediately look at Mike Cameron's hitting statistics, and for those of you like myself that remember what he did that year, you're going to be missing the point. Because sure, he was good at the plate. He wasn't great, but he was good at the plate. But he was phenomenal in the field. Absolutely nails in center field. You couldn't get anything by him. He was going to catch everything. He made good throws. He was fantastic in center field. I think that we as Reds fans tend to think back on 1999 and we're like, Greg Vaughn, baby, Greg Vaughn. And rightfully so. Dude hit the cover off the ball, was just amazing with the bat that season. The best bat in the Reds lineup. But because of how good Mike Cameron was defensively, Mike Cameron led the 1999 team in wins above replacement. Whether you look at Fangraphs or Baseball Reference, the 1999 Cincinnati Reds were led by Mike Cameron. If you put that guy on the 2024 Cincinnati Reds, this team makes the playoffs. And there's definitely some other guys you could talk about. And the reason that I bring up the idea of, looking at players before 1990, like going back, pitching is such a different thing now. And don't start talking to me about Bob Gibson, and don't start talking to me about Nolan Ryan, because those guys were one of one. I'm talking about the average everyday pitcher. Honestly, the Zach Littles, right? Zach Little dominated this Reds team on Saturday. He's not really, he's a professional pitcher, so he has mastered his craft and gotten to the highest level of pitching. But when we talk about the pantheon of greatness of pitching, Zach Little's probably not going to come up in that conversation. But he is pitching like guys before 1990 on the average had absolutely dreamt about. The average fastball nowadays is much faster than it was back then. They're getting far more break on their breaking balls. And you've got cut fastballs that were very, very rare, if thrown at all, before then. So as much as I would love to say, man, put Veda Pinson on this team, or go back and, I don't know, look at like Cy Seymour, go way back and look at guys like that. That kind of gets a little bit tough. So that's why I'm thinking like, a little bit more modern. I would love the argument, and I think that it's probably, and I'm sure if Steve were with me today, and our schedules didn't quite match up to record, but I'm sure if Steve were with me today, he probably would have picked like 2017 Joey Votto or something like that, who he should have won MVP back in 2017. And I'm sorry to my friend Peter Pratt over at Locked On Marlins. Giancarlo Stanton was not as good as Joey Votto in 2017. I know he got the award, but Joey Votto should have won that award. But you could make the argument that he makes this team a playoff team over Mike Cameron, but I think it's, that's a really good fight in my mind. I'd love to hear other suggestions. If you get down in the comments section, or like I said, hit me up on Twitter at Jeff Carr with 3 Fs. I would also love it if you joined the Locked On Reds Insiders. Text Insider to 513-597-0944 and become a Locked On Reds Insider today. For those of you on the Insiders group already, we've got a couple of folks that are Locked On Reds Insiders. Want to thank you for being a part of that group. We're going to make this a lot more active as the season goes along. Just talking, texting back and forth during the games. You get a direct text line to me, and we'll just talk Reds, man. But some of the Insiders know how much, thinking back on different old players and stuff like that and trying to make comparisons and stuff is a fun thing to do for me. But I would love it if you joined the Locked On Reds Insiders and texted me who you think would be an awesome player to add to this 2024 Reds and make them a playoff team. Again, the stipulation is going back through Reds history and looking at non-Reds playoff teams. But finding players that shined on those non-playoff teams, and would they make them a playoff play? Like, it's fun to think about guys like Scooter Gennett or something like that. I don't think he makes this team a playoff team, but it'd be fun to see him on the team. But the Reds don't need a second baseman, so that's not that kind of would hurt. But like, what are positions of need? Guys that shine. How could you put them on this team, and would they be better? Like, I don't know. Does rookie season / second season in the league? Although I think those were playoff teams for him. But, young Aroldis Chapman, how does that work out for this bullpen? Does it fix this bullpen? Like, fun things like that. Love for you to continue the conversation with me. Like I said, text Insider to 513-597-0944, and we'll continue talking Reds all throughout the day. But that'll do it for us here on today's Locked On Reds. Wanted to end the podcast on a bit of a positive note because, quite frankly, this team did not provide any positivity over the weekend. Hopefully they do with the final hours of the trade deadline. We've got just a little over a day and a half. No, 2 days. Yeah, about 2 days left. Tuesday at 6 p.m. I'm going to be releasing this a little bit before Sunday at 6 p.m. So, yeah, 2 days left for the trade deadline. We will be with you all throughout the deadline. Any rumors that come up, any trades that come up, you know that you can tune into Locked On Reds, and we will have your latest info for that because we are Locked On Reds every single day.